Thanks everyone for joining us today. We'll begin in just a moment. All right. Okay. Well, welcome today to our podcast, our webcast panel, How CDFIs and SSBCI Can Aid Manufacturing. My name is Audra Ladd, and I'm the Director of Manufacturing Policy at the Urban Manufacturing Alliance. And we are a national coalition of organizations and individuals focused on building manufacturing economies fit for the 21st century. And our collective goal is creating pathways to middle-class jobs, sparking homegrown innovation, and ensuring that cities and towns continue to be the places where we make products that we need and love. And I'd like everyone on the call today to start us out with some inspiration in the chat. So if you, every one of you could type in the chat your favorite locally made product and where it's from, I think that's a great way to kick us off today. While you're lighting up that chat, I want to introduce you to our welcome speaker. Joanne Hill is the Chief of the Office of Business Development for the United States Department of Commerce, Minority Business Development Agency, MBDA. She leads the nationwide network of 75 MBA business centers, programs, and initiatives which support the global competitiveness of women and minority-owned businesses in the area of contracts, financing, and domestic global supply chains. These programs resulted in $8 billion in awarded transactions to MBA clients in FY20. Ms. Hill is here to share more about MBDA and how it intersects with SSBCI funding. And to get us started, the floor is yours, Joanne.
Thank you, Audra. It's an honor and pleasure to be here with you today and to take part in this important dialogue. I'd like to share a little bit about the SSBCI and MBDA's role to be that's coming up with the program itself. So the American Rescue Plan of 2021 reauthorized the State Small Business Credit Initiative program and provided a combined $10 billion to states, the District of Columbia, territories, and tribal governments to expand access to capital for small businesses emerging from the pandemic, build ecosystems of opportunity and entrepreneurship, and create high-quality jobs. SSBCI provides recipient jurisdictions funding for number one, credit and investment programs for existing small businesses and startups, and secondly, technical assistance to small businesses applying for SSBCI funding and other government small business programs. Per the Minority Business Development Agency's MOU with Treasury, Treasury will transfer or shall transfer $100 million to MBDA to focus its technical assistance on helping underserved entrepreneurs seeking direct capital investment. The U.S. Department of Treasury announced plans to deploy $300 million of state small business credit initiative technical assistance funding to support small businesses across the country. $200 million of these funds will be provided to states, the District of Columbia, territories, and tribal governments that are participating in the SSBCI Capital Program to provide technical assistance to qualifying underserved entrepreneurs and very small businesses with less than 10 employees. Another $100 million of the funds will be transferred to MBDA at the U.S. Department of Commerce, which will focus its technical assistance, that's us, my agency, will focus our technical assistance on helping underserved entrepreneurs that are seeking direct capital investment, such as venture capital financing. Again, that's direct capital investment, such as venture capital financing. Underserved entrepreneurs and very small business owners face multiple barriers to pursuing their ideas, including limited access to capital and the lack of a network of technical support. That is why the SSBCI program was specifically designed to provide technical support funding to these entrepreneurs to help their businesses grow and thrive as part of the American Rescue Plan Act. This historic investment is traditionally in traditionally underserved communities will help mitigate some of the barriers that prevent underserved small businesses or very small business owners from getting their ideas off the ground, building successful businesses, and creating jobs. Through the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, the SSBCI program will provide $10 billion to states, the District of Columbia, territories, and again, tribal governments for small business programs, including $500 million for technical assistance programs. And of the $500 million allocated in the ARP for technical assistance programs, the announcement includes plans for the first $300 million. And many of you have probably heard about that announcement. The technical assistance funding will provide a range of assistance, including legal, accounting, and financial assistance services to businesses owned and controlled by socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. That's the new term now, SETI-owned businesses. And I see you smiling, Audra, because you know, everybody that knows all the different categories of businesses, this is it. SETI-owned businesses, and that's socially and economically disadvantaged individuals own businesses. And very small businesses, again, those with 10 or less employees, applying to the SSBCI program or other jurisdiction or federal programs that support small businesses. These funds will help businesses to grow and thrive by strengthening networks of technical assistance providers across the country that have experience in providing high quality technical assistance to small businesses in underserved communities. They are likely going to be led by founders that have faced barriers to capital access or, again, that have 10 or fewer employees. Treasury and Commerce also jointly announced a historic transfer of $100 million to MBDA, which has a mission to promote the growth and global competitiveness of minority-owned businesses. Underserved entrepreneurs have traditionally lacked access to capital and often experience an even greater disparity in access to venture capital financing. This significant funding is being transferred to the MBDA and will help ensure that more SETI-owned businesses have the tools they need to succeed at home and abroad. Moreover, MBDA, which focuses on the long-term health and sustainability and success of SETI businesses, is uniquely situated to provide technical assistance and help SETI-owned businesses be successful in applying to SSBCI capital programs and other state or federal programs that support small businesses. With this transfer, the Biden administration reaffirms its commitment to supporting SETI businesses, especially when it comes to building a better America. MBDA will tap into its extensive national network of partners to drive and recruit new program partners and SETI participation while utilizing MBDA's decades of long-standing expertise in overcoming historical distrust of government programs by SETIs. MBDA's plan to facilitate a range of technical assistance to small businesses with a particular focus on providing support to entrepreneurs seeking venture capital financing and other forms of equity financing. Additionally, and lastly, the agency will facilitate a suite of additional supportive services such as intellectual property, education, and resources. And with that, I want to thank you, Audra, for the invitation and my other colleagues here that's joining us today. It's an honor again to be with you today, and thanks so much for the invitation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We're very excited to partner with MBDA and see this program as it unfolds, especially your advanced manufacturing sites are going to get a lot of activity coming up, hopefully after this call. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was a lot of great information. I would love the participants to take a quick poll since I'm trying to gauge the SSBCI knowledge here. So if we could just pull that poll up, and if everyone could just go ahead and click the one that you feel is the right one for you, that will help us as we move forward with the panel. All right. And while those results are being tabulated, I want to move on to introductions to the rest of our panelists today. So let me go ahead and move forward with that. Ron Kelly is the outreach and lead for the State Small Business Credit Initiative, a program of the U.S. Department of Treasury, which Joanne mentioned is a partner with MBDA. Ron and his team are the technical experts of SSBCI program and are working most closely with states on their applications and fielding a lot of questions from folks like us. So I really appreciate Ron and his team's time. Our next panelist is Andrew Stettner, a senior fellow at the Century Foundation, a progressive nonpartisan think tank. And he has over 20 years of experience modernizing workforce policies and social insurance programs, and has published numerous policy reports, including the one we co-authored together that we're going to talk about more about SSBCI 2.0 and its application to manufacturers. Sarah Lee is our state voice on the panel today. She's the Director of Economic Development and Advanced Manufacturing for Washington State Department of Commerce. Sarah and her team help small and medium-sized manufacturers find and secure resources that they need to be more competitive and productive. And last but not least, Tomas Duran joins us from sunny Los Angeles, where he's a founding partner of Concern Capital, where he leads a team dedicated to preserving living wage jobs and assists retiring business owners to sell their firms to new ownership, including many small manufacturers. Tomas is also the California president for Chicanos por la Causa. So without further ado, I am going to pitch the first question. My first question is for Andrew. Can you explain why SSBCI is relevant to manufacturing?
Sure. Thanks so much, Audra. First of all, thanks so much, Joanne, from joining from MBDA, and underscore your remarks about the importance of reaching those businesses and entrepreneurs from minority communities and the unique role MBDA can play. And thanks to all of our panelists who have joined us today. Well, manufacturing has some fundamental needs for capital access. The need for materials and also to access technologies, machinery, equipment, creates a greater capital need for manufacturers to create product and profit and be able to repay their debts. And so that's not well understood by the finance sector. And that makes it harder for manufacturers to access both working capital and venture capital. To that point, a National Science Foundation funded study found that manufacturing gets less than 0.5% of all private venture capital funds, with most of that going to software technology versus the hard tech in manufacturing. And these problems are compounded for manufacturing entrepreneurs of color. McKinsey found, for example, that white entrepreneurs start with 3 times as much capital as Black entrepreneurs. And when entrepreneurs of color receive an equity investment, it's only 43% of their white small business counterparts. SSBCI in its 1.0 version during the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act had a major role with manufacturing. Manufacturing was a leading user of SSBCI across different products from loan participations, funds, up through venture capital. One example of through loan participation, the state participates in a loan buying up to 80% at closing. So that allowed the North Carolina Rural Center Community Development Bank to make a loan to CA Manufacturing to buy the equipment that exceeded that community bank's legally required loan to value ratio. SSBCI 1.0 also played a key role in capitalizing the community development financial institution sector. For example, through a foundational investment in Georgia's CDFIs that became an evergreen source of capital for that state's CDFI sector that still exists today. So SSBCI 2.0 has even a greater potential for manufacturing. There's a distinct focus, like Joanne said, on businesses owned by social and economically disadvantaged individuals, which is $1.5 billion of the $10 billion allocated, very small businesses and tribal governments. So there's an incredible opportunity out there for those mission-based lenders on the call and on your community to work with manufacturing entrepreneurs. And think about manufacturing expansively, from craft to foodstuffs to additive manufacturing, i.e. 3D printing startups. All of these can get a new source of capital for their expansion. Our report that Audra and Lee Wellington co-authored with me highlights ways in which states and the federal government can maximize this opportunity. The first is we have to target manufacturers by working with the manufacturing ecosystem in your state. So, manufacturers and manufacturing entrepreneurs, they're not going to know what SSBCI is. Unlike other programs in the last few years, like the PPP program, there's not one brand for SSBCI. But there are a set of manufacturing entrepreneurs and intermediaries, like MEP centers, Manufacturing Extension Partnership. Those exist in all 50 states. Economic development coalitions and state initiatives, like you'll hear about from Sarah Lee, and made in New York, San Francisco, Nashville organizations that are focused on supporting local brands. These organizations have built up trust with manufacturers that can help to connect those businesses to these new financial opportunities. A second recommendation we talked about was creating a CDFI engagement plan. CDFIs, especially those that have experience in manufacturing, are especially important to find those manufacturing businesses that don't get good access to traditional capital. Mountain BizWorks is a member of Urban Manufacturing Alliance's Pathways cohort, and they have a loan guarantee program that helps those businesses with less collateral, and also a multicultural community catalyst fund that requires no personal collateral and focuses on the business's character and growth milestones. These sectors in particular are focused on the outdoor recreation sector and the products that go along with that sector. So the CDFIs like Mountain BizWorks are focused on their community's manufacturing sector and those businesses that need it the most. So for SSBCI to be successful, it's going to have to partner with those CDFIs. So SSBCI has the opportunity to innovate, and we talk about is go below the traditional credit line for those businesses that you're seeking to support. Be flexible with the leverage ratios as your state is planning this to make sure that you have some innovative products that can reach those who don't traditionally get financing. Our final recommendation, and it speaks to what Joanne talked about, is going further than the Treasury's definition of SETI individuals to focus really on those businesses owned by Black, Indigenous, and people of color. By legal and necessity, this definition of SETI is broad, but that doesn't mean that there are efforts that states can do, like partnering with NBDA, like partnering with Black and Hispanic chambers of commerce, historically Black colleges and universities, to really target manufacturers that are owned by people of color. Finally, establishing public venture development organizations. Joanne mentioned venture as being very important. We know that those public venture organizations, ones that have been founded by state government, they've been more willing to invest in manufacturing startups from biotech, that have this real scalable potential. So we believe that venture is a very important strategy for manufacturing in the supply chain. So we've been very grateful that the White House agreed with some of these recommendations, and they put in their Biden-Harris plan to revitalize American manufacturing and supply chains in 2022, a plan to work with the Department of Treasury to convene those state, local, and territorial governments that will be operating SSBCI programs to share best practices of what really happens with SSBCI and manufacturing. States are already participating in this work group of Treasury, and others interested can join this as well. So there's a lot out there, Audra, that can be done to help manufacturing and SSBCI. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Thanks, Andy. And thanks to you all for putting some questions in the chat. We will get to those in a little bit. Ron, you're going to be a popular guy on this webcast. I'm going to go to you, Ron, with a question. Can you provide an update on where you are in terms of evaluating SSBCI state applications, and also the extension on the technical assistance deadlines, and any other context you have for those folks here that are wanting to be part of that TA application.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, before I go there, I think that, I just want to reiterate that, SSBCI is a program that's coming back, right? So it was a temporary program in the Obama administration. It's coming back now, but it's not exactly the same program, right? There's several aspects of the program that are new this time around, and the scale of the program is much bigger in terms of the capital that will be provided to the eligible jurisdictions, right? So in 1.0, it was $1.5 billion over a shorter time period. This time around, it's a $10 billion program over a 10-year period. So the way the allocations work out by state, the state of California is eligible for an allocation of SSBCI funds that is almost equivalent to the entire program for all 50 states and territories 1.0. Right? So the scale is just, it's much bigger this time around. Right? Also different this time around is the fact that tribal governments are eligible to apply. That was not the case in 1.0. And the whole technical assistance program is new in this iteration as well. Right? But let me start with the capital program, because that's where the biggest amount of funding is. That was where Audra's first question was, right? So all states, territories, and the District of Columbia have applied for the funding that is available to them. Both the capital program and the TA program in SSBCI are not competitive. And what that means is that there are specific allocations set aside for all eligible jurisdictions to apply for. Their applications are not a pass-fail application. We work with the states to make sure that the programs that they're applying for actually meet all of the requirements, and there will be some degree of back and forth with the states to ensure that they get to a place where they have applied for funds in a manner that meet the requirements. The SSBCI guidance is pretty broad, right? So on the capital side, it's not like a typical government program where the government says, this is exactly how you have to implement a program. Instead, it is an opportunity for states to design lending and venture capital programs that they believe will meet local market needs. Right? So there's a variety of categories that those programs can fall within, but they're not, the states and territories and the District of Columbia have not just applied like checking a box, right? They've actually designed programs that they feel will meet local capital access needs. So we are in the process now of reviewing those applications. Many of the applications are pretty far along in the review process. 5 states were announced recently that they have been successfully entered into an allocation agreement with Treasury, and there's more that will be released soon in terms of press releases about their ability to access funds. Funds come to the states in 3 individual tranches, each equal in value, and states have the ability to request their second and third tranche when they have committed 80% of their previous tranche respectively. And once states have entered into a allocation agreement with Treasury, they have 90 days to get the programs that they had applied for fully positioned. That doesn't necessarily mean that they need to do a loan or investment within 90 days, but they have to be set up fully to be able to do so. So I think that's the capital program side. I mean, the one thing that I would also add is that tribal governments have not yet passed the deadline for their capital program applications. That will be on September 1st. So tribal governments have the ability to apply up until September 1st. Tribal governments also have the ability to apply in consortia to help ease the administrative burden of starting up and administrating a program like this. Also new on the capital program side this time around is this SETI definition, right? I appreciate Joanne going through that and Andrew touching on it as well. So this focus on socially and economically disadvantaged individually owned businesses was not part of SSBCI 1.0. It is in the guidance this time around. It is a pretty broad definition. I think there's 12 different ways in which a borrower can self-certify as being a SETI-owned business. And there are specific capital set aside in the program that is for SETI businesses. And if states are successful in meeting certain targets that are set for them, they then have the ability to access that additional capital because they have met their targets in terms of serving SETI-owned businesses. So again, that's a new feature in SSBCI 2.0. So that was all related to the capital program, right? So there's also a technical assistance program that's part of SSBCI 2.0. Like Joanne mentioned, $300 million will be available with that. $100 million will be transferred to MBDA for their purposes, and $200 million will be available to all eligible jurisdictions to apply for TA programs. So this is a grant program, but again, not a competitive application process. So all states, territories, the District of Columbia, and tribal governments have specific allocations set aside for them for technical assistance programs. The technical assistance applications for all eligible jurisdictions are due on September 1st of this year. So states, territories, the District of Columbia, and tribal governments are all in the process now of designing technical assistance programs that they will eventually apply for. So again, this is a new program for everybody on the technical assistance side. And the intent of the program is to ensure that eligible jurisdictions have access to capital in order to provide technical assistance directly to small businesses that will be applying for loans or seeking venture capital funding, right? So the purpose of the program is not necessarily a blanket technical assistance program for all types of small businesses, but really focused in on those small businesses who are actively seeking a loan or venture capital investment. And we've touched on this so far, especially with Andrew. The manufacturing piece, right? This is a webinar where we're supposed to be talking about how this could be useful for manufacturing. And if you go to our website and which is treasury.gov/SSBCI, you will be able to find a whole program archive from SSBCI 1.0. And again, the program that's coming back now is not exactly that program, but if you do look at what states implemented in 1.0, you see that the manufacturing sector is one that benefited greatly from SSBCI 1.0. And if you think back to that time frame, that the initial program came out in, it was designed to be an economic recovery program to come out of the Great Recession, right? So at that point, you didn't have as prominent in the news issues about manufacturing and supply chain, right? So I think it's safe to bet that manufacturers will be able to benefit quite a bit from SSBCI 2.0. And we're already seeing that in terms of the programs that states have put forward in their design phase here, where some states have specifically design programs to benefit manufacturing in a pretty sort of narrow programmatic way, right? And we have been convening states to talk about the programs that they're developing. It's a little too early to talk about best practices, I'd say, when we haven't approved all the programs yet, but we are having conversations about what states have planned in terms of providing assistance to manufacturers, and those conversations have been really engaging. And I think in general, states try to design, lending and venture capital programs that are pretty broad, so it gives their financial institution partners more leeway in terms of being able to find transactions that sort of fit the box, right? And it's not, they're not setting up the partners to go find unicorns, right? But like I said, there are specific programs that are also being developed to ensure that some of the capital that will come through the SSBCI program meet certain policy priorities within the state. And so we're happy to see that mix, and I'm sure that we're going to see a lot more of it as the program continues to roll out here. So I hope I answered Audra's questions. I think I also rambled on quite a bit too. So, I'll turn it back over.
That was a lot to cover. You did not ramble, and I have about 6 follow-up questions, but we'll come back to you.
All right.
My next question is for Tomas, and that is, can you set the stage, Tomas, about why focusing on financing business transitions is so important right now, particularly for manufacturing businesses?
Yes. Hi, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I apologize if my video is a little off. I'm at a summer soccer session for my 8th grade who's entering high school, and I had to be here for the moment. Thank you. It's nice to be here. Yeah, I would say, Audra, the short answer to your question is that, especially with transition of ownership, there's a lot of opportunity for people, especially people in senior management or key workers, to buy an existing business. We like to call them workplace entrepreneurs. And that's a very short path to becoming in charge of their own financial destiny. We see manufacturing, we focus on manufacturing as a firm because we see it as the shortest path to middle class in Southern California. It represents an enormous opportunity all over Southern California for people who don't have a lot of training and can get on the job training. We also see it as a way to start building wealth in communities that have been traditionally left out, whether intentionally or non-intentionally, of the economic engines that we see all around us. I like this SSBCI focus on SETI. I think that's a wonderful focus. But I think the slant towards startups, I'd like to see that actually be slanted towards saving existing businesses where there's a track record that the new owners can trade on and get access to capital much, much faster and in a much less risky way. So.
Sorry, can you just talk a little bit about the trends for retirement in terms of ages of business owners?
Especially in Southern California, actually around the country, is a lot of these manufacturing business owners are now past retirement age. A lot of them are trying to rebuild or recover their retirement for the 3rd time in the last 20 years. And they're seeing the sale of their business as that way for them to move on to what's next, for the retirement. Unfortunately, within manufacturing, especially small job shops, the reality is that the private equity firms, competitors, or we like to call them vulture capitalists, the people who are going to wholesale the equipment, will likely come in and buy that business and shut it down, and we have a loss of jobs, which disrupts local supply chains and also impacts those workers. So we see this as an opportunity this time to transition business ownership, which is happening in a lot of different sectors all over the world, as a great way to increase not just employee ownership, but secure those manufacturing jobs and making sure that they don't go away.
And just one more add-on is how does SSBCI play into supporting this transition?
So That's a great question. And unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot. I don't think I have enough time to really fully explain it. But I think that tool as a way to decrease the risk exposure to those lenders who want to get into the manufacturing space. And when you go into manufacturing, a lot of times you're going to be dealing with business owners who didn't set up their businesses to be sold or to borrow. They set them up to support a lifestyle, which means that you're going to have to do some work with them to comb the hair on those books so that everything makes sense and that you can underwrite it well and that you can see the path going forward for you to get your debt back, right? Having an oh my gosh, I always stumble over that acronym. Having that program support like what we've seen here in California with loan guarantees or with prioritizing a particular type of borrower like the SETI-owned businesses, I think is a big way to get the bankers and lenders out of their comfort zones a little bit and try going into this other space where there's a huge opportunity and need.
Thank you. Yeah, that was great. All right, well, we'll be back with another question later, but I have one for Sarah as our state representative here, well, our state economic development person here with a focus on manufacturing. Sarah, as you see this program from the state's perspective, how are you approaching supporting manufacturers and particularly manufacturers of color? Can you just talk about your overall approach?
Thank you very much. And I'm learning a lot. And one of the things that we're doing is for access to capital is that when I talk about access to capital, talking about private funding and financing, this is not with SSBCI, although it could be could work with that. We know that businesses need funding. It's top thing. What do we need? Access to capital. And we know that funders, especially those in the socially impact investor sphere, are looking for opportunities to spend, but it's not happening. And it's because it all comes down to matchmaking. And that begins with finding the right match that meets both the business and the funder's mission, program goals, timeline, and type of capital. But even if you figure you have the perfect match, okay, this is me and my dating in high school, even if you have a perfect match, you do need help getting ready for that first date. Sometimes you need to do a lot of persuasion, in fact, to get people to actually date at all. Over the last 2 years, what Washington State Department of Commerce has been doing is improving our matchmaking skills. And here's some examples of what we've done is as part of the U.S. Economic Development Administration grant, we are doing a market study of the private investor and funder landscape. We're looking at who is looking at funding what results, what demographics, and what issues, and what their requirements are and preferred mechanisms are. We've also just finished up a technical assistance business services landscape scan that looks at that gap between what the business needs and to become an investor and the available technical assistance support to get there. So one of the things that our state legislature just did is appropriated $15 million for a loan fund that we took a look at what are the businesses, these manufacturers, what do they really need and what are they not able to access? So we found that for a lot of small businesses with poor credit, no credit, or a little collateral, we are creating, we're working with a group of committed foundation leaders and private donors to match or exceed the state's investment. And what we're doing is we're going to be providing character-based lending and grant and loan combinations. And what I liked about Director Joanne Hills, she called it ecosystems of opportunity. So creating ecosystems of opportunity, getting the technical assistance lined up with what the businesses actually need. So that is one way we're doing it. Another way we're doing it is we created a donor advised fund. It's one of only 2 in the country that are run by states. We work with a community foundation. They hold the donation from the private individuals and foundations. It's in Washington State determines how the donations will be spent. For example, one of the things these small manufacturers told us was, hey, I can't keep my workforce at work because they're dealing with childcare issues. There's not enough capacity. So Washington State Department of Commerce had childcare grant capacity grants, but we had like twice as many really good applicants as we had money. So what we did side by side, we matched from our Safe Start Fund and we matched these grants. Going back to that Economic Development Administration grant that we've got, one more thing that we've done is we've just launched 8 cluster accelerators in the state. And what we're trying to do is everything from renewable e-fuels to autonomous vehicles. And how this helps small manufacturers is based on the European cluster model, which is industry-led and must include 5 pillars: industry, entrepreneurs, government, academia, and investors. So that's a real quick response. Hope that answered the question, Audra. Thank you.
It absolutely did. And we're so excited to watch that work unfold and support our manufacturers in that state. And I think with all of these, I've had some requests in the chat. Will this be available? Yes, we're going to widely share this information. We really want to be able to talk about this broadly. If there are best practices or interesting concepts, we want you to be able to take a look at them, see if they're replicable in your state or in your community. So just know that if you're on this, you will have available access to the video recording, and we'll follow up with you. I was scanning the chat and also have one other question. And I think, Ron, this one's going to pop back to you, but others could come in too. With the technical assistance deadline extended to September 1st, I've been getting a number of inquiries about what the advice is for CDFIs or other technical service providers to approach states to be included in that application. And so I wondered if you had thoughts on that, or it can be open to the floor.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that was really challenging for a while was, states were developing programs, but unless you knew exactly who was working on it, you didn't have it at contact, right? So we have worked to, within the last few weeks, put up a list on the SSBCI website that is a full contact list for all state programs that have been proposed, right? So we're fully aware that this list will be inaccurate in several weeks, right? But we wanted to put something up to ensure that there was an ability for folks to be able to start building those relationships, right? Again, these are all the programs that have been proposed, right? Not yet approved necessarily. So that is available at treasury.gov/SSBCI. It's a linked PDF document on that site.
Great.
And just we will be updating it periodically too. When I say we know it's going to be obsolete soon, that's not just we're going to leave it up there. We're working to keep it updated.
Yes, and we'll all help you do that.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
To the funding side, I had some questions come through the chat about what is the schedule for deploying the funds once they have been approved. Could you just talk a little bit about that? Because I think CDFIs are trying to see, like, if they have not engaged on the technical assistance, or if they're planning to do so, could they also engage on the lending, and what does that deployment look like? So what is their window of opportunity for engaging the state and participating in the program?
So on the capital side, right?
Yes, on the capital side.
Yeah. So when a state fully gets through the approval process, the final thing is an allocation agreement with Treasury. At the time of the execution of the allocation agreement, within a couple business days, the state receives its first allocation from Treasury. That amount is equal to a third of their total allocation. States know that when they sign that allocation agreement that they need to have their programs fully positioned, any and all approved programs fully positioned within 90 days of signing that agreement. And so programs should be fully operational within that time. And then in terms of the speed that the state deploys, I mean, I think that depends on a wide variety of factors, right? But states certainly have the ability to then request their second tranche once they've committed 80% of the first tranche, and similarly the third once they've committed 80% of the second.
That's helpful. Yeah, I think you mentioned earlier when first, this is a longer term a long-term program. So I just, I really want to stress that for the CDFIs on the call, the community lenders on the call, to, build that relationship with the state. This is a long-term project. And I think there's great opportunities both on the lending side and on technical assistance.
And as Andrew pointed out, I mean, in 1.0, there were some relationships with states that developed long-lasting outside the program relationships, right? Where states worked with CDFIs in a manner where after the program was over, they gave all the money to them, right? And, I think that we're seeing interest in working with CDFIs among states, certainly among tribal governments, right? Where this is all brand new to them. There are native CDFIs, but there are also non-native CDFIs that are interested in working with tribal governments as well. So I think there's lots of opportunity for partnership.
For sure. I have one more. I think it's for Ron, but it could be for anybody. Which is, can you clarify what the technical assistance funds are primarily can be used for? I've had a number of questions in the chat saying, could these funds be used for capacity building or for underwriting a makerspace or for, sort of the beyond the legal and accounting support to a loan itself. So could you just help with some clarification on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that I can say much more beyond what's in the guidance at this point. But I do think that what we're interested in terms of getting applications from states, we are interested in getting a sense from the states of what gaps they see that they want to fill, and we fully realize that there's no way in which this technical assistance funding will fully cover all those gaps, right? And I think that there are certainly opportunities where, thinking about collaboration among states, collaboration with the states and NBDA, given their role here, that we can, create partnerships to make it so more boats rise by, combining those technical assistance efforts. But yeah, I don't think I can say much more exactly in terms of definitions beyond what's in the guidance.
I do want to point out, but maybe Ron can correct me, that the law and the guidance specify that the assistance can be provided both for SSBCI loans or also other state or federal loan programs that are
Correct.
Available to support businesses. So it's not just about preparing for an SBCI loan. It can be for example, I guess like an SBA loan, or if the state has a program like Sarah mentioned, it could be for those, programs as well. And I think it's worthwhile for folks to read the guidance. These terms, legal and accounting, they can seem, bookish, but if you read the guidance, we know what, we know accounting, and that, that's about, thinking what's a viable business plan for that business. So just please read those terms and don't think of them as in the narrow way, but think of them as a way that the way that you need to work with your businesses.
Yeah. And Andy, I have one that is a follow-up that I think you can field, which is, how can CDFIs create programs that make lending easier to manufacturers of color, while still retaining underwriting standards and being responsible lenders? Like you mentioned the Mountain BizWorks example, but is there anything else that comes to mind in terms of what CDFIs can do to really look at how they're supporting their manufacturers and their manufacturers of color?
Well, I mean, I think, one thing that we were working on with our Manufacturing Alliance is, thinking about those companies, that where someone has a product and they're producing it as a sole proprietor. And those individuals are very, loath to risk what they've built on expansion, especially if they're risking their personal capital or their business, especially in the treatment that, some people of color entrepreneurs have gotten from the traditional system. So if we can, structure, no collateral loans, for example, equity investments that, but don't require you to put your business, on the line in those investment. These are some things that can make it more able for those companies to be willing to take that risk. Revenue-based financing, that paying back a loan is linked to certain revenue targets, versus a time horizon. So I just think we want to be, that's one target, for this. I think it's one really important target. I don't think it's been talked about, enough. Remember, $500 million of this is for very small businesses. These are businesses that have fewer than 10 employees, and obviously including sole proprietors. Sometimes these are folks that have great products, but the idea of, working with a contract manufacturer or, scaling up their production, is an intimidating idea. So I really appreciate what Sarah put very succinctly, this idea of partnering with the technical assistance, bringing those two pieces together, the technical assistance alongside the access to capital. And that technical assistance, it might take a bit of time. It could take a year or more of technical assistance before someone will be ready to go into an SSBCI loan product to do that expansion, but that's okay. That's what's special about this program. Like Ron mentioned, it was, kind of a short time frame. The last time we've been dealt with PPP, which is, ridiculously short time frame. This is a 10-year program. It's meant to be in that recover mode from the American Rescue Plan, not the, not the rescue mode. So it's meant to be there, through it. It's could become a more difficult time for access to credit with, interest rates going up, and maybe become a more difficult time for access to credit. So it can be a very important, piece that's out there.
What I really like about the focus on the small businesses is that it helps us talk about manufacturing as more inclusive. I still feel like there's this, when you say manufacturing, people think big auto factory. And as why we started out in the chat about your favorite makers, is that a lot of manufacturing is small batch local artisan manufacturing. And it's those companies that are trying to scale and want to scale. So I guess my question is for Sarah, and she mentioned it a little bit, but with community-based lenders, economic development organizations, with SSBCI and other lending, SBA funds, Sarah, can you just tell us, how are you seeing some of the locally made products, the opportunity for those to be lifted up with what you're doing within your larger, broad view of manufacturing, which includes everything to advanced manufacturing?
Well, what we're finding with our TA landscape study that we took a look at is that what are the sizes of these businesses? Now, I know SBA says, I think it's like 500 is a small business and, et cetera, but where we're seeing is 20 and under. And 20 and under are the folks who don't have access to anything other than, like this pie maker. She tells me about how she goes in, she's really early in the morning and makes all the insides for the pies, and her 2 employees come and they put them up together, they bake them, they take them out, and by 10 or 11 o'clock at night is when she gets back, and then she starts the whole thing at 3 a.m. Well, so what is she missing there? One of the things I asked her was, how are you funding yourself and financing yourself? She said, credit cards. And I said, oh, geez. And she said, yeah, I have horrible credit. And I said, okay, that's why can't access these other things. But we do know that, for example, you pay your rent on time and you pay all of your, your IT stuff and utilities. We can create a loan product that can help, it can be for you. And what that means, of course, again, is you got to bring down the risk, which is, that's how this loan fund will, help bring down the risk. And that's why the other private funders will do, the social impact investors, or what I call the not so ordinary rich people, and so all of a sudden you've got a product that gives them at an interest rate they can afford, gets them off credit cards. And at the same time, what you're doing is you're saying, okay, you need to work, be part of this. You need to be part of the ecosystems of opportunity. Again, I love that phrase. And you have to get yourself financially ready for mainstream funding or financing. And so those are the small ones. Those are the ones that when you take a look at, I think it was American Express did something, 2019, they said, who are the companies that are really going to be our rocket ships? They're women, and even more, they're women of color. So that's just one example, but it's good for the economy, and it's good for those businesses. And you stop looking at them as a disadvantage, but you look at them as an asset for our economy.
Tomas, did you want to jump in? Oh, I think there's a lag. Oh, you're on mute. I think we're still on. I think we still have connection issues with Tomas. He'll come back when we can get him. Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for that. I saw a question in the chat about diverse private equity firms and how they can participate in this SSBCI program. And I know we talked a lot about CDFIs on this call, but Joanne kicked it off talking about venture. We also talked about the need for venture in manufacturing. I would love for someone to talk about whether, I guess it's for Ron. Ron, are you seeing states' applications come in with a significant venture component in those applications where the private equity could participate? Or do you see another place in the capital program where diverse private equity funds could come in and support this?
Yeah, so states on the VC side have the ability to propose programs where they would be doing direct investment into small businesses or to do a funds approach. And we're seeing applications that include both of those things for sure. And we're also seeing on the tribal side, particularly those tribal governments that are forming consortia to apply jointly, where they're also looking to do venture capital programs. Right? And I think there's specific call out in the guidance related to this, and we definitely are seeing in some states where this is definitely a major component of their program design. I'd say it's particularly a major component in the program design for some of the tribal consortia, where they would like to use this opportunity to not only do venture capital investments in their native tribal land, but also really train up a whole cadre of professionals who are able to do this on an ongoing basis, right? We also have some other consortia that are partnering with venture capital firms that tend to focus on BIPOC communities with an understanding that they are missing the I in BIPOC in most of their investment work, and are really upfront about that. So I think we're seeing it in different pockets as we work with the states and also with tribal governments that intend to do venture capital programs.
Thanks, Ron. And that hour went by really quickly. I have one more poll for you all. We could just cue the poll. And this poll is really specific because we want to make sure we're following up with you and really understanding how can we best help you now. This call was just an introduction and a level setting and an information sharing, but we really want to know what you need, and we don't want to provide something that you don't need. So if you could just fill out this poll, we would really appreciate it, and we'll collect that information and plan our next ventures accordingly. But I'm going to wrap up right now. I want to thank all of the participants, all of our panelists for attending the webcast, for providing this time and advice and inspiration to all of us here. We want to thank the Kauffman Foundation and the Surdna Foundation who help us do this work in the UMA's Pathways to Patient Capital initiative. So again, a recording will be made available. We will be sharing the folks that were on this webinar and all of our contact information. And we encourage you to keep asking questions and keep engaging with us as we move forward. So appreciate every one of you, and thank you for tuning into this webcast. Thanks.